My front door had duct tape running across it like a little spiderweb dot, crisscrossed layer after layer, and covering one another, confining me within my own house. A bright pink HOA violation letter was pasted over the mess in the middle. I felt the resistance of what must have been a full roll of tape when I yanked at the door handle. The majority would have been incensed. Since Patricia Summers, the self-declared queen of the Oakwood Heights HOA, had just committed the worst error of her small, trivial life, I couldn't help but smile. I took out my phone and began recording, capturing every angle of this strange confinement and every strand of tape. According to the notice, I was not allowed to enter or leave my house until the necessary permissions were secured, because my house was temporarily uninhabitable owing to unapproved modifications. It was deliciously ironic. Patricia was clueless about who she was interacting with. I have no idea. I had moved into this peaceful suburban haven 3 weeks prior, keeping to myself while I made repairs. Although the previous owner had left it in good condition, I decided to make some changes. Just a little landscaping, new paint for the shutters, and a new mailbox, nothing big. I tried not to bother people by working quietly, mainly in the evenings after my day job. I met Patricia Summers for the first time at that time. Despite the overcast weather, she showed up at my property boundary on my third day with a clipboard in hand and big sunglasses resting on her bottle blonde hair. With a tone that said I should bow in her presence, she introduced herself as the HOA president. Subsection 12.3 of the community norms was apparently broken by my unsightly work van, parked on my driveway. I calmly mentioned that I would be pleased to go over the rules and that I required the van for work. She sighed and told me that not knowing the regulations was not a valid excuse. She then began criticizing my new shrub location and mulch color selection. She said that they were 2 inches too near the sidewalk. I stated I will check into it and thanked her for the information. I didn't disclose to her that, before buying the house, I had already gone over every HOA document and was positive that neither my van nor my bushes broke any real restrictions. The abuse began modestly. Using that clipboard, I took pictures of everything as I walked past my house every day. Grass that was allegedly 1/4 inch too tall was the subject of violation notices. Complaints that, after I changed the bulb, my porch light was too bright and then too dim. She even formally complained about my garden hose's color, saying it didn't match the neighborhood's aesthetic. I bit my time, documented everything, and replied courteously each time. The escalation was steady yet slow. Every time I went outside, Patricia started to record me, telling me about my activities on her phone like a crazy nature documentary. She would loudly declare that the resident of 423 Maple Drive was mowing his lawn at 6:45 p.m. It's obvious that this is upsetting the tranquility at family dinner time. Ignore the fact that 6:45 was totally acceptable and within the bounds of any noise restriction. She enlisted her goons, a gang of retired board members who had nothing better to do than scout the neighborhood for violations. If they were out 5 minutes past the appointed retrieval time, they would congregate at the end of my driveway, pointing and whispering while snapping photos of my garbage cans. Harold, one of them, used a tape measure to measure the height of my mailbox and stated with triumph that it was 1/2 inch too high. After that, I received letters on official HOA letterhead threatening to punish me and take legal action if I didn't repaint my shutters from an unapproved navy to an authorized midnight blue right away. Patricia was unconcerned that these were nearly identical in hue. She desired submission rather than obedience. She wanted me to be aware of the person in charge. The letters accumulated, each one more absurd than the one before it. Penalties for very melodic wind chimes, a welcome mat that was the incorrect shade of brown, constituted a violation. Reasons for my flower bed's overabundance of flowers. I kept track of everything, scanning every letter, storing every email, and documenting her increasingly bizarre actions. Through my professional training, I learned to be meticulous and patient. You do not conduct an investigation in a hurry. You carefully construct your case, assembling supporting data and biding your time. I was glad to allow Patricia to continue shoveling because she was digging her own tomb. One Tuesday morning was the last straw. I had finished some inside painting. On a rare day off, I heard activity at my front door at around 10 in the morning. I was astounded to see through the peephole as Patricia and two of her friends started putting duct tape around the frame of my door. They made sure I couldn't open the door without a lot of effort by working layer after layer with the efficiency of those who have done this before. Patricia ceremoniously slapped the pink notice in the middle after taking a moment to appreciate their job. After taking a few pictures, most likely for her weird HOA scrapbook, she marched out her supporters, following her like ducklings. After letting them go, I tried the door, which was well sealed. They had actually recorded me in my own house. The majority of individuals would have dialed 911 right away. But I thought of something better. I went to the rear door, which they had ostensibly overlooked in their haste, and then I went back to record their work from the outside. There was a lot of tape, probably 3 complete rolls. Through the plastic cover they had employed, the warning was hardly readable, but I could still make out allusions to safety issues and unapproved alterations. This was ideal, completely flawless. I went back inside, turned on my laptop, and started writing my report. I was in charge of all residential properties in the county, including board member residences and HOA common spaces. As a state-certified housing inspector with the Department of Community Affairs, Patricia had just falsely imprisoned a government officer while he was performing his job. It was a felony. I wasn't going to stop there, though. Oh no, Patricia had opened a door that she ought to have kept shut. I opened the public records database and got to work on my investigation. Patricia's house at 157 Oak Street appeared right away. Even though aerial images plainly indicate a modern addition on the back of the house, no permits have been pulled in the last 10 years. Fascinating. I looked further. 6 months ago, the HOA's business license expired. Their liability coverage was no longer in effect. They were engaging in unlawful activity. Even more intriguing was the story revealed by the financial documents, which were all publicly available. For the incorporated HOA dues, totaling thousands, were collected. Where was it heading, though? Not to the upkeep of the shared areas. Based on the playground's condition, rather than the security patrols that were promised but only mentioned in the newsletter. I discovered additional anomalies the deeper I dug. Patricia had been making payments to her brother-in-law's landscaping business, a management firm that shared an address with her vacation house. It was more than petty tyranny. This was deception. I put all of my research into one thorough report, included documentation of my unlawful detention, and forwarded it to my manager, along with a request for emergency inspection authority. Within an hour, the response was received. I was given permission to carry out a thorough inquiry. And the state attorney's office was particularly intrigued by the financial anomalies. They would deploy a squad of their own. Together with 2 other inspectors and a sheriff's deputy, I arrived at Patricia's house at precisely 8 a.m. the following day. When she opened the door, the expression on her face was priceless. After I showed my credentials and the inspection warrant, there was a moment of confusion, followed by recognition and then fear. "Miss Summers, good morning," I said, with a smile. "The State Housing Authority is where I work. Our purpose is to perform a compliance inspection of the HOA offices and your property." She made an effort to object, saying she wanted to contact her attorney and requesting more supporting paperwork. With composure, the deputy clarified that obstruction would result in an instant arrest. As I started my walkthrough, Patricia's face turned blank. Holding a digital recorder and recording infractions permitted for the official record, unauthorized expansion, about 400 square feet. The electrical work is not coded. Is that the 1972 restriction on aluminum wiring? Every room added to the list. There was mold in the crawl space, unauthorized plumbing work, and an unpermitted deck that was already beginning to indicate structural problems. Her home office, where she stored the HOA records. Financial records that were obviously tainted. Receipts for personal expenses paid with HOA monies. And a laptop containing emails detailing how to evict homeowners who didn't meet community standards was the coup de grace. Similar to how she had taped my door, Patricia's house was covered with infraction warnings by lunchtime. Over $40,000 in fines were imposed, and criminal charges are still pending. We weren't finished, though. The HOA office followed, housed in what had once been a community center, but had been transformed into Patricia's private haven. More infractions and proof of financial wrongdoing. The investigators working for the state attorney were having a great time. Patricia called an emergency meeting in an attempt to rally the board members, but most of them abruptly remembered essential engagements elsewhere when they arrived to see state officers taking out boxes of paperwork and computers. Harold was the only one who remained, but that was only to blame Patricia, saying he had always felt something was amiss, but that she had scared him into keeping quiet. That evening's emergency HOA meeting was standing room only. Like wildfire, word had traveled throughout the neighborhood. Patricia was seated at the board table, but a typical folding chair had taken the place of her customary throne-style chair. I was just another worried homeowner standing in the back. The findings, including financial misconduct, power abuse, and operating without the required permits, were outlined by the state attorney's representative. The list lasted about 20 minutes. The vote of no confidence was unanimous when it came time. Harold even voted against her. The reign of Patricia was over. She sprang to her feet, trembling with anger, and pointed at me as the gavel descended. She yelled, "He is solely to blame for this. Since he moved here, he has been hatching schemes against me. He is a spy and a plant." There was silence in the room. I came forward, presented my credentials to the audience, and composedly explained that I had relocated here legally, purchased my property just like anybody else, and only disclosed my occupation after being forcibly detained in my house. The cheers from the audience seemed to completely depress Patricia. As the county prosecutor rose to declare the criminal charges, she sank back into her seat. He read from his document, "Patricia Summers, you are accused of operating an unlicensed business, embezzlement, fraud, and false imprisonment. You could also be subject to $200,000 in civil penalties for a number of safety and housing issues." Patricia's mouth fell open. $200,000. Like a death sentence, the number lingered in the atmosphere. Her voice was barely heard as she murmured, "I want my lawyer." The prosecutor nodded and told her that a formal summons would be sent to her in 72 hours. Regarding the false imprisonment charge, it was punishable by up to 5 years in prison. As Patricia's reality set in, her face turned gray. 5 years.